Imagine a bustling mall, a simple shopping trip, and one bold act of prejudice that spiraled into a life-changing revelation. When a fiery store manager kicks out an older man wearing a MAGA hat, she thinks she's taken a stand, but little does she know, that man owns the entire mall chain. What happens next will shock you, inspire you, and make you question how we treat others. Stay tuned, because this is the story you won't want to miss. Before you speak or act against someone, think twice. The person standing calmly, speaking kindly without anger or abuse, might be far more powerful and influential than they appear. Never underestimate simplicity. Sometimes, the most unassuming people hold the greatest strength. Comments below where you're watching from, and if you like and love our story, kindly subscribe our channel. Life, inspirational, and motivational tales that explore themes of love, unity, and patriotism. Stay with us always for interesting stories. Thanks. Let's start the story. The mall was alive with energy that Saturday afternoon. Families with strollers navigated the polished floors. Teenagers laughed in groups as they flitted between stores, and seasoned shoppers carried bags from high-end boutiques. The air was filled with a mix of ambient music and intermittent announcements echoing over the intercom. Among the throng of people was Daniel Thompson, a well-dressed older man in his late 50s. Dressed casually but impeccably, his polished shoes and tailored jacket hinted at a man of means. Perched atop his head was a red MAGA hat, which seemed almost out of place in the upscale environment. Daniel wandered into one of the mall's most popular clothing stores. It was a flagship outlet, renowned for its exclusivity and cutting-edge designs. His intention was simple: to find a gift for his granddaughter's upcoming birthday. Despite his stature as a businessman owning a chain of properties, Daniel enjoyed moments like these, shopping anonymously, blending into the everyday life of his customers. Emily Rodriguez, the store's manager, noticed Daniel as soon as he entered. She was a sharp, ambitious woman in her late 20s, known for her meticulous attention to detail and ability to run the store like clockwork. Yet, when her eyes landed on Daniel's bright red MAGA hat, her demeanor shifted. She immediately associated him with the rhetoric and division she believed the symbol represented. With a forced smile, Emily approached him. "Good afternoon," she greeted him, her tone teetering between professional and curt. "Is there something I can help you find today?" Daniel turned to her, his expression warm and polite. "Thank you. I'm just browsing for now, looking for something special for my granddaughter." Emily nodded stiffly and stepped back, though her eyes remained fixed on him. She muttered something under her breath, inaudible but not unnoticed by a nearby sales associate. Daniel, engrossed in a rack of dresses, paid no mind to the tension emanating from Emily. As the minutes passed, Emily's irritation grew. She watched as Daniel moved from rack to rack, his hat standing out like a beacon amidst the crowd of chic shoppers. Unable to contain her disdain, she walked over again, this time with less pretense of civility. "Are you finding everything you need?" she asked, her voice clipped. Daniel nodded. "Yes, thank you." Emily crossed her arms, her facade slipping further. "I just want to point out that this store has a very inclusive policy. We aim to create a safe and welcoming environment for all our customers. Daniel looked up from the dress he was examining, his expression puzzled but unshaken. That's wonderful to hear. Inclusivity is important. Emily raised an eyebrow, her tone now tinged with sarcasm. I'm sure you'd agree, considering your choice of attire. Realizing the direction of her comment, Daniel maintained his calm. I didn't realize my hat was an issue, he said gently. It's not just the hat, Emily replied, her voice growing louder. It's what it represents. Frankly, people like you make others uncomfortable. Several shoppers, sensing the tension, began to turn their heads. The soft buzz of the store dulled as conversations quieted. Some employees looked at Emily, their expressions a mix of confusion and unease. Daniel stood straighter, still holding the dress he'd picked out. I'm sorry if I've made anyone uncomfortable. I'm simply here to shop, just like everyone else. Emily's smile was gone now. We don't serve your kind here, she said, her voice clear enough for nearby customers to hear. A hush fell over the area. The weight of her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Daniel's face betrayed a flicker of hurt, but he quickly composed himself. Without raising his voice or responding in kind, he gently placed the dress back on the rack. I see, he said, his tone measured. Thank you for your time. He turned and walked toward the exit, his back straight and his pace calm. As he passed through the doorway, a few shoppers whispered among themselves. Some glared at Emily, while others pulled out their phones to record the moment. Emily watched him leave, her arms still crossed. She felt a strange mix of vindication and unease as she glanced at the faces of her customers. Unbeknownst to her, the confrontation had already begun to circulate on social media. Videos were being uploaded with captions like, "Store manager harasses shopper over MAGA hat," and "Discrimination in broad daylight." Outside the store, Daniel paused to collect his thoughts. A faint smile crossed his face, not one of happiness, but of understanding. He knew something Emily did not. Her behavior wasn't just unprofessional. It had been witnessed by the wrong person. Quietly, he reached into his pocket and dialed a number. "Hello, Laura," he said when his assistant answered. "I need a review of personnel policies at the mall. Start with the flagship clothing store." Without another word, he ended the call and walked down the mall corridor, his calm demeanor masking the storm that was brewing. Inside the storm, Emily carried on, oblivious to the ripples her actions had set in motion. The atmosphere in the mall seemed unchanged, bustling with life as Daniel walked away from the store, his polished shoes clicking softly against the tiled floor. On the outside, he was calm and collected, but inside there was a deep sting of disappointment. It wasn't the first time he'd encountered prejudice, but this time was different. It wasn't just about him. It was about the values he believed in and the kind of culture he strived to foster within his company. He gripped his phone tightly, resisting the urge to respond immediately. This required strategy, not emotion. Back inside the store, Emily was anything but reflective. She stood at the register, recounting the incident with one of her colleagues, her voice carrying a note of self-righteousness. "I just couldn't let him walk around here flaunting that hat like it's no big deal. It's about standing up for what's right," she said, her arms crossed defiantly. Her colleague hesitated, glancing nervously at the other shoppers who were still murmuring about what had happened. "I don't know, Emily. He didn't seem to be causing any trouble," she ventured cautiously. Emily waved her off. "Trouble or not, symbols like that don't belong here. I don't regret what I did." Meanwhile, the shoppers who had witnessed the confrontation were divided in their reactions. A middle-aged woman who had recorded the entire incident on her phone spoke wildly to her friend. "I can't believe she did that. He was so polite, and she just kicked him out." Another shopper, a younger man in a casual hoodie, chimed in. Good for her. People who wear that hat think they can get away with anything. She had every right to stand up to him." The whispers and opinions were no longer confined to the store. Within minutes of Daniel's exit, the first video of the confrontation hit social media. Captioned, "Store manager kicked out MAGA hat customer," the post began to circulate rapidly. Some users lauded Emily as a hero for confronting what they saw as a divisive symbol. Others condemned her behavior, calling it unprofessional and discriminatory. The online debate was fierce. Supporters of Emily praised her courage, arguing that such symbols should not be normalized in public spaces. Critics, however, highlighted the dangers of judging someone solely based on their appearance or affiliations. They accused Emily of weaponizing her authority as a store manager to enforce her personal biases. As the video gained traction, news outlets began picking up the story, framing it as a debate on customer rights versus personal beliefs. Headlines like "Clothing store controversy, manager rejects MAGA hat customer," and "Mall incident sparks heated debate on social media" flooded news feeds. Comment sections were ablaze with arguments, each side digging deeper into their stance. Through it all, Daniel remained silent. He watched the uproar unfold from his office later that evening, his laptop open to a series of news articles and social media posts. His executive assistant, Laura, stood nearby, ready to take notes. "Do we issue a statement, sir?" she asked hesitantly. Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response." Laura nodded, jotting down his instructions. "And the store manager." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. "We'll address her soon enough. First, I want to see how she handles this on her own. People reveal a lot about themselves under pressure." Emily, unaware of Daniel's true identity, was riding the wave of attention. She had received a flood of messages, some supportive and others critical. On a personal blog, she posted a long-winded explanation of her actions, framing herself as someone who stood against intolerance. The post gained some traction, further polarizing opinions. But the cracks in her confidence were beginning to show. By the next day, store foot traffic had dwindled noticeably, with several customers choosing to shop elsewhere. A few passers-by stopped to point at the store, murmuring about the incident. Emily tried to ignore the growing tension, but the weight of her actions was becoming harder to dismiss. As the media frenzy escalated, the mall management team received an anonymous tip about Daniel's true identity. The revelation sent shockwaves through the hierarchy. The man Emily had dismissed so casually was not just any customer. He was the owner of the entire mall chain, News outlets quickly latched onto this twist, amplifying the story even further. Evelyn's now existed for birthdays, times they gigged out. The buzz around the incident reached a fever pitch, with national news channels running segments on the unfolding drama. Late-night talk shows joked about the irony of the situation, while social media erupted with memes and parodies. Emily, still unaware of the full truth, began to feel the weight of public scrutiny as she noticed reporters lingering near the mall entrance. Daniel, however, remained steadfast in his decision to wait. He contacted his legal team to ensure every step he took was calculated and deliberate. His focus wasn't on vengeance, but on ensuring that his company's values of inclusion and respect were upheld. By the end of the week, Emily received a summons to attend a mandatory meeting at the mall's central office. Her stomach churned as she read the email. The subject line simply read, "Policy Review and Staff Conduct Meeting." She had no idea that Daniel himself would be attending. As the chatter online reached its peak, Daniel made a private phone call. "It's time," he said simply, his tone resolute. The pieces were in motion, and Emily was about to face the consequences of her actions, consequences she never could have anticipated. The initial frenzy surrounding the viral video began to take an unexpected turn as journalists scrambled for more information about the man at the center of the controversy. Who was the Republican customer with the MAGA hat, and why had he remained silent despite the uproar? News outlets sought to interview him, but his identity remained elusive. Attempts to contact him through social media led to dead ends, and his lack of public response only added to the intrigue. The breakthrough came when a sharp-eyed reader recognized Daniel Thompson from a photo shared in a business journal. The article, published months earlier, highlighted his success as the CEO and owner of Thompson Properties, a conglomerate that included several high-end malls across the country. Among them was the very shopping mall where the confrontation had occurred. The tips sent ripples through the media, and soon the story was no longer about a MAGA hat. It was about a billionaire quietly owning the space where he'd been so publicly humiliated. Headlines exploded with the revelation. MAGA hat wearer ousted from store turns out to be mall owner. The twist captured national attention, drawing in audiences who hadn't even followed the original incident. Social media was set ablaze with commentary. Supporters of Daniel praised his calm demeanor and speculated about what he might do next, while critics of Emily doubled down on their accusations of her unprofessionalism. Online, the narrative shifted dramatically. Threads and posts debated the power dynamics at play. Many questioned how someone so influential could have been treated so poorly in his own establishment, while others expressed concern about the broader implications of judgment based on appearances. Memes of the incident flooded platforms with captions like, "When you kick your boss out of his own store," and "Guess who's not getting Employee of the Month?" Unaware of the bombshell revelation, Emily continued to bask in the attention she was receiving online. Her blog posts about standing up against intolerance gained traction, and she relished the supportive messages pouring in from like-minded individuals. Each notification on her phone felt like validation for her actions. In her obliviousness, Emily began doubling down on her narrative. During a casual conversation with her team, she declared, "I don't care who he was. That hat represents hate, and I'm not afraid to stand against it." She spoke with conviction, though a few of her colleagues exchanged uneasy glances. The growing scrutiny of the store had begun to make some of them uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Daniel's resolve to handle the situation with patience was paying off. His executive team, now fully briefed, supported his decision to address the matter discreetly. "We can't rush this," Daniel explained during a conference call with his management team. "This isn't just about me. It's about the standards we set for how customers are treated in all of our properties." To that end, Daniel scheduled a meeting with the mall's senior management. He wanted them to understand the gravity of the situation and ensure that they were aligned with his vision of professionalism and respect. His team worked quietly behind the scenes, reviewing footage, collecting accounts from witnesses, and preparing for the steps ahead. As preparations for the meeting continued, Daniel made an additional request. "Set up a surprise visit to the store," he instructed his assistant. "I want to address this directly, but not as the CEO, at least not at first." The day before the meeting, Daniel visited the mall anonymously one last time, observing from a distance as customers entered and exited the store. It was business as usual on the surface, but he could feel the lingering tension. Employees moved about with forced smiles, and a few customers hesitated at the entrance, clearly aware of the controversy. It was clear that the incident had left a mark on the store's reputation. Emily, engrossed in her routine, didn't notice Daniel among the crowd. She continued to interact with customers, some of whom recognized her from the viral video and whispered as they passed. Still, she carried herself with the same confidence as before, convinced she was in the right. The stage was set. With the news of Danielle's identity circulating widely and the meeting with mall management arranged, the story was approaching its most dramatic moment. As Daniel prepared for his surprise visit to the store, he reflected on the larger implications of the incident. This wasn't just about correcting an employee's mistake. It was about setting an example for how businesses should uphold. The next day, the mall's staff received an email announcing a mandatory meeting for all employees. Emily, curious but unbothered, assumed it was routine. She had no idea that her world was about to be turned upside down. The staff gathered in the break room of the upscale clothing store, their conversations a mix of curiosity and speculation. The sudden announcement of a mandatory meeting had thrown off their usual rhythm, and the presence of a few well-dressed executives standing near the entrance only heightened their confusion. Emily, still riding the wave of attention from her viral video, stood near the back, arms crossed. She assumed the meeting might be about the store's recent surge in publicity. Moments later, Daniel Thompson walked in. Dressed in his usual understated elegance, he carried himself with quiet authority. None of the staff recognized him, though a few noted his resemblance to the man from the video. Emily, glancing at him briefly, furrowed her brow as if trying to place where she'd seen him before. Daniel's calm demeanor belied the gravity of what he was about to address. "Good afternoon," Daniel began, his voice firm but polite. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for gathering here on such short notice. My name is Daniel Thompson. I'm the owner of this mall, and by extension, this store." A murmur rippled through the crowd, with employees exchanging wide-eyed glances. Emily's confident posture stiffened. Her arms dropped to her sides, and her face went pale. She blinked, as if struggling to process what she'd just heard. Daniel paused, letting the weight of his words settle. His gaze scanned the room before landing on Emily, who now looked visibly uncomfortable. "I've come here today," Daniel continued, "because of an incident that occurred in this very store not long ago. An incident that I, unfortunately, experienced firsthand." The silence in the room was deafening. Employees shifted awkwardly in their seats, and a few exchanged furtive glances toward Emily. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but quickly closed it again, her mind racing. "As many of you are aware," Daniel said, "a video has circulated widely showing an employee of this store asking a customer to leave based on nothing more than the hat he wore. That customer was me." A collective gasp rippled through the room. All eyes turned to Emily, who now seemed frozen in place. Her mouth opened again, but no words came out. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead as she struggled to maintain her composure. Daniel's tone remained calm but firm. "I came into the store that day not as the owner, but as an ordinary customer. I was met with hostility, judgment, and ultimately humiliation, all because of an assumption made about me based on my choice of clothing." Emily finally found her voice, though it was shaky. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't mean to offend you. I was just trying to protect the store's atmosphere. I thought—" Daniel raised a hand, cutting her off gently but firmly. "You thought it was acceptable to discriminate against someone based on an assumption. That is not the standard we hold in this company. Professionalism and respect are non-negotiable values here, no matter what personal opinions you may hold." The room was tense, the weight of Daniel's words pressing down on everyone present. Emily, desperate to salvage the situation, tried again. "I only wanted to ensure other customers felt comfortable. I didn't think—" "That's precisely the problem," Daniel interjected. "You didn't think. And in doing so, you not only alienated a customer, but also compromised the reputation of this store and our entire brand. I expect better from every employee who represents this company." The staff remained silent, watching as Emily's confidence crumbled. Her earlier bravado was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a mixture of shame and panic. Daniel took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "Effective immediately, you are suspended from your position, pending a formal review. This isn't a decision I make lightly, but your actions have consequences, not just for you, but for the entire team that relies on this store for their livelihood." Emily's lips trembled and tears welled in her eyes. She looked around the room, but her colleagues avoided her gaze, unwilling to offer support in the face of such clear accountability. Daniel addressed the rest of the staff, his tone softening slightly. "Let this serve as a reminder to all of you. Every customer who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance, beliefs, or background. This company values professionalism above all else, and I trust you will uphold that standard moving forward." The room remained quiet as Daniel concluded. He glanced at Emily one last time. I hope you'll take this time to reflect on your actions and consider how they've impacted not just yourself, but those around you." Emily nodded weakly, unable to muster a response. She gathered her things and left the room, her steps heavy and deliberate. Her colleagues watched in silence as the door closed behind her, the weight of the moment hanging thick in the air. Daniel turned back to the remaining staff. "This isn't the end," he said, his voice steady. "It's an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to ensure that incidents like this don't happen again. I'm confident that together we can create an environment where everyone feels welcome." With that, he dismissed the staff, who left the room in subdued groups, each one reflecting on the events they had just witnessed. Daniel lingered for a moment, taking in the quiet space. He knew the confrontation was only the beginning of a larger effort to reinforce the values he wanted his company to embody. The fallout from the store incident was far from over. The story, now a media sensation, dominated headlines and social media platforms. News outlets featured the viral video alongside the revelation of Daniel Thompson's identity as the owner of the mall chain. Public opinion was overwhelmingly critical of Emily, and debates about discrimination in customer service and workplace ethics became the focus of talk shows and online discussions. Pundits dissected the incident, questioning the role of personal biases in professional settings. Some argued Emily's actions reflected a larger societal issue, while others pointed out the importance of professionalism regardless of personal beliefs. Hashtags like discrimination in retail and customer rights trended, sparking widespread conversation about the incident's implications. Emily, who had once basked in the fleeting support of like-minded individuals online, now faced a storm of criticism. Former allies turned against her as the details of Daniel's identity and her unprofessional behavior came to light. Comments flooded her social media pages, ranging from harsh critiques to personal attacks. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from friends and family, many of whom expressed disappointment in her actions. Sitting in her small apartment, Emily scrolled through the endless stream of articles and posts. Her heart sank as she read the words of strangers condemning her for her actions. Even more painful were the texts from close friends, questioning how she could have acted so impulsively and hurtfully. However, one message from her younger sister struck a nerve. "You always taught me to treat everyone with respect. What happened to that?" For the first time since the incident, Emily allowed herself to confront the weight of what she had done. She replayed the moment in her mind, the look of quiet dignity on Daniel's face as he left the store, the shocked expressions of the customers, and the ripple of murmurs that followed her outburst. She realized that her actions had not only hurt Daniel, but also tarnished her reputation and betrayed the principles she once prided herself on. The mirror reflected a tired face as Emily stood in front of it, gripping the edge of the sink. She had let her biases take control, ignoring the basic decency she owed to another human being. The realization was sobering. She thought about how easily she had judged Daniel based on his hat and the assumptions she had made without considering the person behind it. In the quiet of her apartment, Emily began to reflect on the deeper reasons behind her actions. Her strong opinions, fueled by personal experiences and societal narratives, had blinded her to the importance of treating everyone with fairness and respect. She recognized that change wouldn't come easily, but it had to start somewhere. Determined to make amends, Emily sat down at her kitchen table with a pen and paper. Drafting an apology letter felt like the first step toward addressing the damage she had caused. She chose her words carefully, wanting to convey her regret and take full accountability for her actions. "Dear Mr. Thompson," she began, her hand trembling slightly, "I am writing to express my deepest apologies for the way I treated you during your visit to the store. My actions were unprofessional, unjustifiable, and deeply hurtful. I let my personal biases cloud my judgment, and for that, I am truly sorry." As she wrote, Emily felt a mix of shame and determination. She acknowledged in the letter that her behavior had not only disrespected Daniel, but also failed to uphold the values of her workplace. She expressed her hope for the opportunity to learn from her mistakes and to demonstrate that she was capable of growth and change. "I understand that my apology may not undo the harm I caused, but I want you to know that I am committed to reflecting on my actions and working to ensure they are never repeated. Thank you for your patience and dignity in handling the situation. I hope you can find it in your heart to accept my apology." Emily signed the letter and set her pen down, her chest tight with a mixture of fear and hope. Would Daniel even read it? Would he believe her sincerity? Or was it too late to make things right? She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into an envelope. As she sealed it, she realized this was only the beginning of her journey toward redemption. Whether or not Daniel chose to forgive her, Emily knew she had to take responsibility for her actions and work to become a better person. The next morning, Emily walked to the post office, clutching the letter tightly. She hesitated for a moment before slipping it into the mailbox, her heart pounding. Whatever happened next was out of her hands, but she hoped that her gesture would at least begin to make amends. Emily paced nervously in her small apartment after sending the letter, unsure of how Daniel would react. Days passed with no word, and she began to lose hope that he would ever respond. Yet, one afternoon, her phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender's name made her heart race. Daniel Thompson. The message was concise but polite, inviting her to a private meeting at the mall's administrative office. Emily reread it several times, her stomach churning with a mix of relief and anxiety. The day of the meeting arrived quickly, and Emily dressed carefully, wanting to convey both respect and humility. When she entered the sleek conference room, Daniel was already seated at the head of the table. His presence was calm but commanding, his expression unreadable. Emily felt small in his presence, but she reminded herself of why she was there. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," Emily began, her voice shaking slightly. Daniel gestured for her to sit, his gaze steady. "I appreciate your letter," he said. "It takes courage to admit when you've done wrong." Emily took a deep breath and began explaining herself. She didn't make excuses, but spoke honestly about how her biases had clouded her judgment. "I let my personal feelings take over," she admitted. "I know now that my behavior was unprofessional and unfair. I've been reflecting a lot, and I want to change." Daniel listened carefully, his expression softening as she spoke. "Emily," he said after a pause, "we all have biases. What matters is how we confront them and grow from our mistakes. What you did was unacceptable, but your willingness to own up to it is a step in the right direction." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears of relief. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I know I have a lot to learn, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes." Daniel nodded, leaning forward slightly. "I believe in second chances, but they come with responsibility. I want you to undergo training on diversity and inclusion, not just as a punishment, but as an opportunity for growth. You need to understand the impact of your actions, not only on individuals like me, but on the culture we're trying to build here." "I'll do it," Emily said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." Satisfied with her sincerity, Daniel began discussing the changes he intended to implement across the company. The incident had revealed deeper issues in workplace culture, and he was determined to address them. "This situation has highlighted a need for systemic change," he said. "I'm introducing mandatory training for all employees on customer service and anti-discrimination. We're also setting up channels for employees to report incidents of bias or misconduct anonymously." Emily felt a sense of hope as she listened to Daniel's vision. The changes he described were more than just damage control. They were steps toward creating a more inclusive and respectful environment for everyone. As the meeting concluded, Daniel offered a faint smile. "Emily, I hope you take this second chance seriously. Growth isn't easy, but it's worth it." Emily nodded, her voice firm. "I won't let you down." Over the next few weeks, Emily began attending the mandatory training sessions. The sessions were challenging, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about her own biases and the ways they had influenced her actions. But instead of shying away, she leaned into the process, determined to come out stronger on the other side. Daniel kept a close eye on her progress, occasionally checking in with her trainers. He wanted to ensure that she wasn't just going through the motions, but truly embracing the opportunity for growth. To his relief, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Meanwhile, the company's new policies were rolled out, with employees across all locations undergoing the same training. The initiative was met with initial resistance by some, but ultimately gained widespread support as employees recognized its importance. The company's reputation began to recover, and Daniel's leadership was praised as a model for handling workplace issues with integrity and vision. One day, as Emily walked through the mall, she noticed Daniel observing her from a distance. She was assisting a customer, a young woman with limited mobility, by carrying her shopping bags to the elevator. Emily's demeanor was warm and professional, a stark contrast to the person she had been during the incident. Daniel smiled faintly, knowing he had made the right decision in giving her another chance. Later that day, he sent her a short message. "Keep up the good work." For Emily, the journey was far from over. She knew that real change would take time and effort, but for the first time in weeks, she felt hopeful. She had been given a second chance, not just to redeem herself, but to become a better person. As she left work that evening, in her heart, Emily carried a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that her actions, good or bad, could ripple outward, affecting countless lives. With every step forward, she was determined to make those ripples positive. Daniel strolled through the mall on a crisp morning, taking in the lively scene around him. Shoppers moved with purpose. Laughter echoed from the food court, and employees greeted customers with genuine smiles. The atmosphere had shifted since the day of the incident. The tension and division that once lingered seemed to have been replaced by a sense of unity and respect. It wasn't just a mall anymore. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when people chose to grow and change. As he passed the flagship clothing store, Daniel paused at the window. Inside, Emily was helping a young boy pick out a gift for his mother. Her warm smile and easy demeanor stood in stark contrast to the defensive and judgmental person she had been weeks ago. The boy's face lit up as Emily knelt to his level, offering patient guidance and genuine encouragement. Daniel watched silently for a moment, pride swelling in his chest. He had taken a risk by giving her a second chance, and it was clear that Emily hadn't squandered it. Her growth was evident not only in her interactions with customers, but also in her role as a mentor to new employees. She now led by example, emphasizing the importance of treating everyone with dignity and understanding. Inside the store, Emily caught sight of Daniel through the glass. She straightened up, a hint of nervousness flashing across her face before she gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. Daniel returned the gesture, his expression calm and reassuring. It was a quiet exchange, but it spoke volumes about the journey they had both undertaken. Continuing his walk, Daniel reflected on the changes that had unfolded since that fateful day. The mandatory training programs had not only improved employee interactions, but had also fostered a culture of accountability and respect. Employees reported feeling more confident in their roles, and customer satisfaction ratings had soared. The incident, painful as it had been, had served as a catalyst for growth. Not just for Emily, but for the entire company. As he reached the central atrium of the mall, Daniel stopped to admire the hustle and bustle around him. Families gathered near the fountain, teenagers laughed as they compared their shopping bags, and employees from various stores greeted one another with camaraderie. The mall had become more than just a shopping destination. It was a community, thriving on the principles of inclusion and respect. Daniel's thoughts turned to the future. He knew that the changes implemented in his company had the potential to ripple outward, influencing the industry as a whole. He began considering ways to expand the training program beyond his own malls, collaborating with other businesses to promote empathy and understanding on a larger scale. As he headed toward the exit, Daniel felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The incident that could have easily been dismissed as a momentary lapse had instead become a turning point, inspiring meaningful change. He was proof that even the smallest actions, whether a mistake or an act of redemption, could leave a lasting impact. The story concluded not with a single moment of triumph, but with the quiet, ongoing progress of people committed to doing better. Daniel had witnessed firsthand the power of second chances, the strength of humility, and the transformative potential of empathy. As Daniel stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, he glanced back at the bustling mall, his heart full of hope. The future wasn't just about avoiding mistakes. It was about learning from them, growing together, and building a world where everyone felt valued and included. Before you speak or act against someone, think twice. The person standing calmly, speaking kindly without anger or abuse, might be far more powerful and influential than they appear. Never underestimate simplicity. Sometimes, the most unassuming people hold the greatest strength. Comments below where you're watching from, and if you like and love our story, kindly subscribe our channel. Life, inspirational, and motivational tales that explore themes of love, unity, and patriotism. Stay with us always for interesting stories.